G'day, Professor Joseph Drew here. I'm here to talk to you this time to answer this question, are local governments running out of cash? And the answer is absolutely scary. It should take people's breath away. Now, if you're a regulator or a minister of local government, please watch this video all the way through and get in contact with a bona fide expert, someone such as myself or Professor Brian Dollery, and get some really good advice, because if we're not proactive and start doing something, we're heading for an absolute disaster. Okay, so let's look at some actual data. This data is from New South Wales, but if we looked at the other states, we'd find similar sorts of trends. So first of all, you need to know we're looking at unrestricted cash. This is cash that local governments can dip into for emergencies, for contingencies. It's a bit like your savings account. If we look over at the axis here, we see these numbers. They're dollars, and they're in thousands of dollars because that's how it's presented in the financial statement. So this number here is $12 million. For most councils, that's quite a healthy level of unrestricted cash to have, but it depends on your size. Larger councils with big budgets over $100 million, $12 million may not feel as comfortable as a smaller council with a budget of $30 million. So it is size dependent. Now let's have a look at quartile 3. Now you recall, that's the yellow line here, you'll recall that quartile 3, the top 25% of councils are above this line. And you can see that on the whole, you'd say that it's been trending up, a little bit of a dip in this last year. This is COVID starting to kick in, but it's reasonably healthy and there's not too much to worry about there. Let's look at the average or the mean. If you added them all up and divided by a number of the councils, what's happening? It was pretty flat, then it went down. We're starting to climb up again. Not too much of a concern. You know, we're sitting somewhere between the 8 million and 10 million mark. It's not worrying me a lot either. It's when we get to a better measure of central tendency. So central tendency refers to the typical council. Now, means are unreliable averages, because if you have a couple really big numbers, it drags everything up and makes it look a lot better than what it should be. The median is a much better number. What's that? If you put them all in ascending order, picked out the middle number, that's the median. And look what's been happening to your typical council. This is the orange line. When you look at the median, it wasn't particularly healthy in the first place. It was shy of 3 million. And it's been heading downhill ever so slightly. But that doesn't even scare me. It's when we look at quartile 1, the bottom 25% of councils, the reserve in terms of how much unrestricted cash they have. That is absolutely frightening. Look at it. It was low to start off with. It wasn't even 2 million, less than $1 million. And we're heading very, very quickly for zero. And in the next graphs, you'll see that that really is a huge problem. Okay, so one of the things people might say, oh, you know, maybe they're stashing their money in internally restricted cash, and that's why unrestricted cash looks so bad. Okay, now, internally restricted cash should be heading up. Why? Because we've been prepaying FAGs, the FAG intergovernmental grants, and the responsible thing is to stick that in internally restricted cash, because one day it won't be prepaid and that money needs to be sitting there. Otherwise you'll be high and dry and in a lot of trouble. So you can see your quartile 3 councils have been stashing their prepaid FAGs into internal restricted cash, and of course some of your staff entitlements are going up too with wages. That's to be expected. Same things happening with average councils, but I wasn't worried about those two groups anyway. I'm worried about your median council and your quartile 1 councils. And look, they're not heading up despite the prepaid FAGs. They're pretty well flatlined. And that says quite clearly that that unrestricted cash problem that we saw in the last slide, it's not because they're stashing it away elsewhere. It is a real serious problem. And in the next slide, you'll see how serious it is, because I'm going to focus down further than that quartile 1. I'm going to look at the first decile, the bottom 10% of councils. So just to recap, unrestricted cash is very low for our bottom quartile councils, And we know it's not low because they're stashing it into internal reserves. It's for another reason. Now, in this graph, I'm just looking at the median councils, the bottom 50% of councils, and I'm particularly concerned about this bottom 25% of councils. That's this orange line here. But I've added a new line too, the bottom decile. That's the bottom 10% of councils. Now this graph should send a shiver up the spine of every local government minister and every local government regulator. Of course, this is not a problem for the whole sector. This is going to be a problem for those bottom 25% of councils that are really struggling. And you can see the unrestricted cash for the bottom 25% of councils is hovering just below now $500,000. Now, to put that in perspective, think about it. These tend to be smaller rural councils. You're looking at budgets $10–20 million, and they have just $500,000 left in savings. That is a real concern. But it gets worse. It's not even that bottom quarter, and that they concern me a lot. But let's now have a look at the bottom 25% of councils. It's this grey line. It's hovering at zero. And in fact, in 2021, you can't quite see it here, it does actually hit zero. They have no unrestricted cash for contingencies, for emergencies. 10% of our councils do not have any unrestricted cash to deal with contingencies or emergencies. This is an extremely concerning situation. So we've got a looming disaster ahead of us, and we need to take proactive action now. What do we need to do? First of all, we need to understand the problem. Those graphs only give us a hint at the real problem. We need a proper financial sustainability analysis of the different states in Australia. Do you know that there is no national financial sustainability analysis? There hasn't been one since 2006, and it was pretty ordinary work that you wouldn't want to rely on. I'm talking about here not a dodgy little here's some ratios that we've extrapolated from other state studies like we had in 2006, but a comprehensive evaluation of financial sustainability. We need to know which local governments are in trouble so that we can start working with them before they fall over. So that's absolute #1 priority. If you're a minister or a regulator, can you please understand we've got a huge problem here, and we are flying blind. We don't even know where the problem is and how big it is. We must do something about this. The second thing we need to do is get real evidence-based solutions that actually work. Not the things we've been doing in the past. Most of them haven't been working. We need to tap into that world's best scholarship. And the leading scholars in the world are actually Australians. Brian Dollery and myself, we've been leading in many spheres of local government scholarships for many years. But even if they weren't Australians, we need to tap into that knowledge, that scholarly knowledge, and apply it to the problems that we have. And we can't wait. And we can't guess and giggle like we've done in the past. And we can't have pretend expert panels with pretend experts on there. We must have bona fide expertise. And that's the key, to get real experts on the job and get them on the job quickly. We simply cannot delay any longer. So I hope this video has been a wake-up call. I hope it's worried a lot of our local government ministers and local government regulators, because they need to be worried. Just imagine what these next lot of financial statements at the end of this June are going to look like, that we won't see until the end of November. You should be worried. The time to act is now. You wait much longer, it's going to be too late for a lot of communities. Now, if you're in a local government and you know you're in trouble, get on the front foot, start doing the SRVs, start getting your pricing right, use the resources on this channel. Flick this video around, use it any way you want, because all I'm interested in is helping communities. So send the video around and help me to help others. Thank you very much for your time. Goodbye.